music scene, wherever in the United States or in the UK or wherever, I don't think I would probably pursue a career in music, shall we say. Let's not dwell on that.
Oh, what names? Come on.
Well, I think there's a lot of very formulaic pop stuff that's out there,
R&B, the new style.
Well, I really take offense to that term, them calling it R&B, because
it is odd, isn't it?
No, it isn't. It's like a kind of a very sort of plastic, kind of engineered kind of, I'm not even going to call it disco soul, because that's degrading disco, and it's especially degrading soul. It's just a kind of like a very plastic kind of pop, which is all kind of engineered by some guy in a studio with an Apple Mac or whatever. Sorry, I shouldn't use brand names, but the whole thing. There's nothing wrong with Apple Macs, by the way. They're great if they're used properly. I'm talking about the use of them.
I know what you mean. It's just they're little mini musical science experiments.
Yeah, it's so processed and it's so flat. The music doesn't great music to me, whether it's rock and roll or it's classical music or jazz or folk or blues or prog rock or whatever it is. It should have tremendous peaks and lows and it should move you when you sit and listen to 2112 or Dark Side of the Moon or Abbey Road or Physical Graffiti or whatever it is you're listening to, Close to the Edge. I mean, we can go on and on and on. It should move you in some way. It should take you on a journey. And I don't mean, oh wow man, take me on a journey. I mean, really enrich your soul perhaps in some way. I mean,
this other stuff is more like it anesthetizes you.
It is. It's just like a kind of I don't know what it is actually. It's just kind of. I think they used to call it elevator music or something. I mean, and to be honest with you, I don't want to sound as if I'm sort of aging or whatever, but they're all the same. There's no difference between any of them.
But they're all using the same software plugin to roboticize their voice. So
exactly. I mean, it's sort of okay, Rush are a Canadian band, but even from their era, if you look at other people, people like, say, April Wine, which some of your audience might know or remember, who are a hard rock band, but round about the same time. And there was another power trio called Triumph. There was a guitar player called Rick Emmett, who I always liked. I don't know if your audience might be familiar with him, but that they were they never ever quite got to the same level as Rush, but they were Canadian, as I recall, and they were a power trio. But there was a huge difference between Rick Emmett's style and Alex Lifeson's style. You could they all had their own identity, or listening to some of the other sort of American slightly prog influenced. I mean, okay, prog was largely a British thing, but the American people also got in on it. There was a band called Kansas that had an album called Left Overture, Carry On Wayward Son. Maybe some of your audience knows that. And the guy had a violin, and that was their kind of little twist. You knew it was them. But the guy who played violin in that band didn't play it in the same way that the guy who played violin for John McLaughlin, Mahavishnu Orchestra, Birds of Fire and all those, In a Mounting Flame, all those. He was a different style. They all, okay, so they're using, even if they're using the same instruments, they had enough blooming talent. They used the instruments to how they wanted to sound. If you listen to John Lord with his wonderful Hammond organ with Deep Purple, he sounds completely different to me, to my ears, to, Keith Emerson using it in Emerson, Lake and Palmer, or even on the odd occasion, John Paul Jones playing Hammond organ with Led Zeppelin. They all had their own style. Nowadays, there's no personality with any of these people. Do you know what I mean?
Well, the good news is that's all correct. The good news, and I have a sunnier view of it, maybe because I'm only getting into my true music career now versus even several years ago when things were still so dark, is that those people aren't selling records anymore, hardly, comparatively, and the chances for guys like you to kind of come up and do things grassroots style and the thing we're doing now. You might have languished 10, 15 years ago without an audience.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can see a change coming, and I mean, to be fair, obviously it's a question of circumstances and where people are and what position they're in and so on. But I mean, there have been, you mentioned Dream Theater earlier on, and I mean, they've been going year in, year out for, I don't know what it is now, 15 or 20 years, and they were going at a time when it really was not cool to be in anything remotely to do with progressive, progressive rock and so on. And so, I mean, yeah, it's thanks to a lot of, in England we had a group called Marillion and a guy called Fish who used to be their singer, and then he now has a solo career. And so it's a handful of people that just kind of know we are going to carry on, and thank God that they were there, because they and a lot of the older guys who maybe went away for a little while are sort of now coming back. I mean, maybe some of your audience and yourself are familiar with, there's a guy called Peter Hamill here in England, and he used to be in a group called Van de Graaff Generator, who very, very popular in England, and they went away for a few years and they've come back now, and they're making some really bold artistic statements, and they're a prog rock band and so on, and so they're bringing their older audience obviously back with them, and also a newer audience, and then because they are more famous, Rush are more famous, of course, obviously, and Yes are still going and so on. So maybe those people are obviously on the front cover of the magazine, and that's fine and that's cool, and if that's what it takes to get the magazine off the shelf and into people's houses and get them reading the magazine or listening to radio shows like yours or whatever, so be it. But then once they're turning over the magazine or listening to a show like yours or whatever, once they've been invited in via Rush or Zeppelin or Pink Floyd or whoever it is, then maybe there's an opportunity for the other people like ourselves. Right. Do you know what I mean? To get a look in and to be heard. So to me, really, it is all kind of, it is all positive. I think my only concern, and this is maybe a little bit more possibly in the UK than it is in the US, I'm not sure, and that is that because for a number of years you had this, what people are calling euphemistically R&B, because you had a lot of this stuff going on, there's a slightly older audience out there that is feeling very embittered and thinking that everything that's out there nowadays is rubbish and nothing is worth listening to. And it's trying to convince those people. And we are getting there, Rest assured, we're making a breakthrough, and so are other bands. Mm-hmm. But it does take time, and you really have to say, look. Yes, there was a lot of nonsense for a lot of years, but things are turning a corner, There's stuff out there to, like ourselves, like The Treat, but there are also a number of other people coming up on the scene, like there's a British group called Diagonal that have got their roots in King Crimson and Soft Machine and people like that, and they're sort of, they're coming along. There's a girl singer, I've forgotten her name now, but she's in a group called Panic Room, and they're not their latest album, but their last record. I mean, she's mixing an Eastern style of singing with this wonderful, great hard rock and tremendous progressive rock influences coming in there. There are people out there really trying and really making an effort and really putting everything into it. And all I can say is if hopefully your listeners are very broad-minded. I'm sure they must be if they like Rush and people like that. But all I can say is listen to the newer people as well. It won't diminish your love of Rush or of Zeppelin or Yes or Floyd or whoever it is. It won't diminish your love of them. We're not replacing those people. All we're saying is just give us a chance as well, and it will further enrich your listening experiences, hopefully.
Give Treat a chance.
Pardon me?
Give the Treat a chance.
Give the treat a chance. Absolutely. Absolutely give the treat a chance, yes.
Cool.
It's a treat to listen to the treat, yes.
Hey, stupid question. What's the treat? Where is that from, the name? Is just
where is the name from?
Yeah, it's just a cute name that you came up with, or?
Well, very, very early on, when we absolutely first formed, people kind of squabbling over band names and what people should be called and not. And I mean, there were all kinds of names bandied about, and thankfully I've forgotten most of them. But at that point, very early on, we all agreed on a name called, when the name was Burn, actually, because I think everybody that particular week happened to be listening to Deep Purple or something. I don't know, whatever it was. Anyway, and we called ourselves, and within about 2 or 3 weeks, or the best part of a month, we kind of realized there was a band kind of a mile and a half down the road that were also gigging, that were called Burn, and we sort of kind of ignored it, and we said, no, we're the better group, we'll call. Anyway, as the months went on, we did find on 2 or 3 occasions promoters were getting confused as to who they were booking and so on, and we said, look, this is impractical, really, to and also I think I was a bit uncomfortable with it slightly, because although in some respects it's a great sounding name, it has been overused, and not just that, it maybe takes us a little bit too much into a metallic direction, and we wanted more of a prog kind of, right. More of a, I mean, the thing about sort of, a group name like Yes, or even like Rush, you're not quite sure what the music is. Do you know what I mean? And I like that. That idea has always appealed to me. Yeah. You don't know quite what to expect. And so, I don't know, we were banding around lots and lots and lots of names, and we said, let's call it The Treat, and it just kind of stuck, and it kind of grew from there.
So was the what, I forget the part of speech the is, but is the try to differentiate you from that other band, The Treat, from I think the 80s? Were you aware of that?
Yes. Again, we were, to be honest with you, we were after unaware, honestly, of their existence. It was only actually soon after we got our distribution deal, which we have with a distribution company in England that distribute our records all around the UK and overseas as well. And obviously I had to kind of get into the whole sort of, further and further into the business side of running a band and making records and all the rest of it.
Right.
And I kind of saw on some sheet or another, I can't remember now where it was, and it said treat this and treat that, and I thought, well, that's got nothing to do with us. And soon after that, round about that time, we got a review in one of the national magazines, and the journalist said, this is the UK-based Treat, and not anything to do with, the heavy metal band from the 1980s. And I thought, oh God, was there a heavy metal band in the 1980s? So, oh no, yes.
Treat. Well, you would figure no metal band would name themselves Treat. That's such a.
Well, yes. I was going to say that actually, to be fair, though, they are called Treat, and we are called The Treat.
I understand.
Yeah, and although we always were called The Treat, to be honest, but Dave, who's our percussionist and multi-instrumentalist, he's very kind of pernickety about that. He says, we always must make sure we always call ourselves The Treat, because otherwise we might get confused with the other group. But to be honest, I think even if you went on Amazon or Play or any of those places where you can, get any Treat material from, or indeed any of the download sites like iTunes and so on, it becomes very, very obvious, that it's two different groups, because with their stuff, they were, shall we say, a 1980s hair band, a metal band, and with us, the album covers, if you look at our album